Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition, and we turn now to poem 596. When I was small, a woman died. Now, when this poem was published in 1890, it was called Along the Potomac. What's fascinating about this poem is that she begins actually with the death of a woman who will become the death of a mother, but what she's really interested in is not the death of the mother, but the death of the son, who will then go to meet the mother in heaven. And she's not even interested in the flood subject, as we've called it, of what happens in the afterlife. None of that. She's interested in critiquing the very notion of the American Civil War. Now, this has always been one of those hot button subjects for Emily scholars. Why? Because Emily very rarely steps out of her small little confined space in Amherst to actually talk about the war that is going on around her. Unlike her contemporary Whitman, we've given full lectures at learnstrong.net of all of the poems of Leaves of Grass and of course Drum Tabs. We don't have very much of Emily's observations about the war itself. And in that regards, this will take us back to our study of 409 and 426. You guys will remember 444. It feels a shame to be alive when men so brave are dead. One envies the distinguished dust permitted such a head. The stone that tells defending whom this Spartan put away. What little of him we possessed in pawn for liberty. The price is great, sublimely paid. Do we deserve a thing that lives like dollars must be piled before we may obtain? Are we that weight sufficient work, that such enormous pearl as life dissolved be for us in battles horrid bold? It may be a renown to live. I think the man who died, those unsustained saviors, present divinity. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already worked through our set of introductory comments. I'm hopeful as well that you've worked through the preceding 595 poems. We just finished with 595, footlights. The scholars that have commented on this, and I want to share with you just a few. First of all, Johnson himself says the following. Francis H. Dickinson of Belchertown, serving with the 15th Regiment, Company F, was killed in action at the Battle of Ball's Bluff, 21st October, 1861. He is said to be, quote, the first man on Amherst's quota to give up his life for his country, end quote. By the way, this comes from Carpenter and Morehouse, The History of the Town of Amherst, Massachusetts, Amherst, 1896, page 478. Ball's Bluff, Virginia, is on the Potomac, about 45 or 44 miles northwest of Washington, on the Maryland border. Now, Sewell, in his treatment of this section, points out the following. There's a letter, and it's one of the only comments Emily ever made about the war. And this is what she says. Mrs. Adams had news of the death of her boy today from a wound at Annapolis. Telegram signed by Fraser Stearns, you remember him. Another one died in October from fever caught in the camp. Mrs. Adams herself has not risen from her bed since then. Happy New Year stepped softly over such doors as these. Dead, both her boys. One of them shot by the sea in the east, and one of them shot in the west by the sea. Christ be merciful. Fraser Stearns is just leaving Annapolis. His father has gone to see him today. I hope that ruddy face won't be brought home frozen. Poor little widow's boy, riding tonight in the mad wind back to the village burying ground where he never dreamed of sleeping. Ah, the dreamless sleep. Now Sewell goes on and says, this letter, with one about Stearns and a few random remarks, comprise her total comment on the Civil War. Nothing about issues, about slavery or the Union, nothing specific about victory or defeat or any of the heroes on either side. It was not that she, now this is Sewell, it was not that she shut these matters out of her life. She had to come to terms with them in her own way. And when Amherst boys were killed, the tragedy of the times emerged in her marvelous little elegies on these young men lost in the dreamless sleep, like the one we're about to read, Francis H. Dickinson, as we said, killed in action. Now, the scholar Herberger has said it this way. The Civil War, quote, the Civil War offered Dickinson a stark symbolic theater, a place of ultimate terror and exultation in which Mundane life was forgotten, and there was both everything and nothing to lose. War gave her a powerful vehicle with which to parse her own extremity. I think it's well said. It's brilliant. Let's read the poem. I was going to say enjoy it, but you can't enjoy a poem like this. When I was small, a woman died. Today, her only boy went up from the Potomac, his face all victory, to look at her. How slowly the seasons must have turned till bullets clipped an angle and he passed quickly round. If pride shall be in paradise, ourself cannot decide of their imperial conduct, no person testify. But, proud in apparition, that woman and her boy pass back and forth before my brain, as even in the sky. I'm confident that bravos perpetual break abroad for braveries remote as this in Scarlet, Maryland. It's a brilliant poem, because she begins by commenting that when I was a little girl, when I was small, by the way, small, used in 77 of her poems, as we point out, a woman died. Now, today, in other words, many years later, her only boy, and again, this is Francis Dickinson, no relation apparently, went up from the Potomac, right? His face, all victory. I will remind you that when we get to 772, poem 772, Emily says all is the price of all. In other words, he gained victory through death. To look at his mother. How slowly, she says, the seasons must have turned till bullets clept an angle. In other words, the boy lost his mother. And it must have been slow. And now all of a sudden a bullet clept an angle. By the way, notice angle and angel. It's brilliant the way she can play these games. And he passed quickly round. By the way, clipped, only used once in all her poetry, and it's here. She literally can capture in poetics a man being shot in turn. It's brilliant. And then she'll talk about paradise. We've seen her, of course, reference paradise a few times already in her poetry. If pride shall be in paradise, we can't help but think about Milton and Paradise Lost with this referencing to pride in heaven. If pride shall be in paradise, ourself cannot decide if their imperial conduct, notice the language of royalty here, no person testified, but proud in apparition, that woman and her boy, notice, pass back and forth before my brain as even in the sky. It's brilliant. In other words, she imagines seeing the two united. The mother who left when Emily was a little girl, and now being reunited, or being again reunited with her son, right? She says it this way: I'm confident that bravos, only used one other time, you'll remember it in 93, perpetual break abroad for braveries remote as this in Scarlet, Maryland. It's brilliant that she goes from imperial to scarlet. What are we going to do with a poem like this at 2A? I think what she's arguing is that to honor the dead of war is so important for us, and to recognize the connections within the family. At 2B, well, notice, of course, in the poem that the name of the boy is missing. That allows for us to sorrow together for the dead of any mother's sons, and of course of sons' mothers. And again, the royalty of language. At 3A, we do have the other Civil War poems of 409, 426, 444, and then we mentioned the Battle of 494 that we just did. Finally, at 3B, who is someone that you know who has been touched, affected by war? I hope Emily's challenging you the way that our drum tap study of Leaves of Grass did. Thank you.